From ABC News, World News Sunday, here's Forrest Sawyer.
Good evening. Israel tonight is challenging a United Nations resolution. The cabinet has rejected a UN investigation of the killing of 21 Palestinians by police last week. Instead, the government today opened its own investigation of charges of police misconduct. It is a move almost certain to stir even more controversy in a region already hanging on the edge of war. ABC's Dean Reynolds has more.
More than 1 million Palestinians in the occupied territories were confined to their homes for the 6th day in a row. Still, it was quiet. Police kept things quiet in Jerusalem, too, where tourists prowled the old city's alleyways in relative serenity. In fact, the only real noise today came from the Israeli cabinet meeting, where ministers loudly and unanimously rejected the UN and its team of investigators appointed to probe Monday's deadly violence.
The Israeli government will have nothing to do with it. It has refused to meet any one of the members of this delegation.
The Israeli committee investigating the incident met for the first time today, and while it can only make non-binding recommendations, officials say that's better than the UN idea.
They already condemned Israel. They already issued a verdict, so what's left for discussion here?
Plenty, according to a left-wing Israeli human rights group, which says the Israeli government is wrong to call the police innocent.
Shooting by security forces was indiscriminate, a way by which you can't possibly be very exact regarding your targets.
The Palestinians aren't very exact on why they threw stones at Jewish worshippers. They say they were protecting their mosque, but hardly anyone believes it was actually in jeopardy. Adding to the confusion is the changing Israeli government's story of who was behind the bloodshed. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Shamir pointed at the PLO.
It was a result of a organized provocation of some Arab terrorists.
But today, on This Week with David Brinkley, Defense Minister Moshe Aaron said something different.
I think it was a clear-cut case of Muslim fundamentalism running wild.
Almost a week after the clash in Jerusalem, nothing seems very clear-cut, except that there appears to be plenty of blame to go around. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
Israel's defiance of the UN comes at a delicate time. The U.S. is reportedly preparing to seek new diplomatic initiatives, including UN resolutions aimed at peacefully forcing Iraq out of Kuwait. ABC's Dennis Trout has more on the new campaign.
President Bush has been talking tough about Saddam Hussein since the invasion.
America's resolve to end this aggression against Kuwait remains firm and undiminished.
But the administration suggested today it wants to tone down the rhetoric about Middle East war.
The president all along has been trying to resolve this diplomatically.
No one has ever thought this kind of struggle would result in an easy, quick, or surgical war. Everyone has always known that it could result in very high U.S. and Allied casualties.
White House Chief of Staff John Sununu predicted that the next offensive against Iraq will be diplomatic.
The President feels strongly that they ought to receive international condemnation, and there's been discussion of putting together a proposal for a resolution in the UN.
Baghdad denies reports that Saddam Hussein is considering pulling out of much of Kuwait in return for an end to UN sanctions. But Iraq's foreign minister embarked on a surprise round of meetings in Jordan and Tunisia this weekend aimed at finding a way out of the confrontation. No one can be certain whether Iraq really is exploring the possibility of a deal or if it's just a ploy. But sources say the Bush administration, sobered by estimates of potential battlefield casualties and other costs to the U.S., is looking hard for options short of war. Dennis Trout, ABC News, the State Department.
The United States also has delicate diplomatic problems inside Saudi Arabia, where U.S. troops are based. The Saudis have banned many activities common in the West: drinking, dancing. Women aren't even allowed to drive. And there is the most delicate problem of all: religion. ABC's Chris Bury has more.
Saudi Arabia is strictly an Islamic country. The public practice of other religions is forbidden.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us pray.
But here today, Army Captain Marty Reynolds conducted a non-denominational Christian service. A warehouse served as church, a forklift truck as altar. Since they arrived, American troops have quietly conducted religious services. though the U.S. military has tried to ban press coverage for fear of upsetting the Saudis or providing propaganda for Iraq, which claims American infidels have defiled Muslim holy places.
There's no need to throw it up on the satellite or throw it out into the faces of our Saudi hosts.
In Saudi Arabia, the U.S. military calls chaplains morale officers and orders them to hide religious symbols in public.
So we take the cross, covered up with the regular rank insignia.
There have been complaints of Bibles being confiscated by customs. The Army has stopped soldiers from even discussing religion with reporters.
I still have my beliefs and my
You can't really talk about religion out here. I really can't let this stuff go out.
The military insists that it is not restricting religious freedom, that chaplains serve all faiths.
That's what we're here for, to provide the soldiers an opportunity to exercise their constitutional right of worshiping as they see fit.
In this Islamic society, that is a delicate task, balancing the religious needs of Americans without offending the Saudis they are here to protect. Chris Bury, ABC News, Saudi Arabia.
Still in the Middle East, Lebanon, for the second day, Lebanese and Syrian troops have surrounded the French embassy in Beirut, demanding the surrender of defeated mutinous General Michel Aoun. Aoun is awaiting a decision on his request for political asylum in France. He sought refuge yesterday after a large-scale air and ground attack crushed his two-year rebellion against the government. In our next segment, official Washington's newest preoccupation, pointing the finger for the budget crisis. And later, old gridiron warrior George Allen tries to work one more miracle.